Hello, everyone. How are you doing tonight? Welcome, 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 welcome. How you doing? Glad you are all here. So much that we can talk about tonight. So much that we can talk about. Folks, it's 9:30 p.m. in New York City. I'm sitting here in my lovely, lovely Brooklyn apartment. I have with me plenty of orange juice. No unnamed diet beverage because it is late. It is late and I do want to sleep because I have work in the morning. But since you're all here, I figured we'll do a late night conversation. This is the last day of June. Tomorrow begins July. So before we jump into it, if you have not already done so, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Be sure to hit the notifications bell so you get notifications about what we're doing here, right? The more the merrier. Be sure to tweet this out. Be sure to make this your Facebook status. Be sure to make this your Twitter tweet. Be sure to put this on Reddit. Let's make this a bigger conversation. The more people who watch this, the more fun we have. Plenty to talk about tonight. Our usual format has been that I give my kind of opening spiel, my opening speech, spiel, whatever you want to call it. I give my opening presentation. And then from there, we do our roll call, and I give you all names and shout out everyone who's watching. And then from there, I answer your super chats, and sometimes I do a little bit of something after that. But tonight, I think we'll just answer the super chats and be done since it's late already. So, super chats are welcome. I will write them down as they come, and once we finish the roll call, I will answer all of them. Super chats are deeply appreciated. Like I said, I will get to them when I'm finished with the roll call, which comes after my opening presentation. So, as we're all piling in here, be sure to hit that like button. Be sure to hit the subscribe button. Let's do our thing. And I will jump right into my prepared remarks for this evening. Folks, we've had a little bit of fun lately. We've done this a few times, so I figured we would do it again. I have the latest issue of The Economist. The Economist. And in The Economist, every issue they have the world this week in politics. Okay. Writing it down, Arab socialists and communists. Okay. So they have there this week in politics. And I have often had fun giving you my interpretation and comments on the highlighted stories in This Week in Politics from The Economist. So this is This Week in Politics from The Economist, comments by Caleb Maupin. Brazil's education minister, Abraham Weintraub, resigned after the Supreme Court included him in an inquiry into a criminal scheme to spread slurs and threats directed at judges. Mr. Weintraub had described the judges as bums who should be jailed. He has flown to America. Folks, Brazil. Do folks remember Brazil? Remember in 2016 when Dilma Rousseff from the Workers' Party was forced out of office. She was impeached. She was the leader who had come to replace and succeed Lula da Silva from the Workers' Party. And there was all this talk about how socialism, my sister is a liberal who doesn't believe the revolution will take place and in capitalism. How do you convince someone that capitalism, all right, that capitalism will end and socialism will take place? Okay. It's people. Alrighty. So, Brazil. In 2016, we were told that socialism, which had ruined Brazil, we were told, was over. Serious sanctions, sure. socialism had ruined Brazil. Michel Temer, who I've met, I was in Brazil. I gave a presentation in Brazil in February of 2016, just before Dilma was forced out of office. I spoke at a conference. I gave a 2-hour presentation to a group of trade union activists in Brazil. I had the honor of meeting who was then the vice president of Brazil, Michel Temer. He then became the president shortly after I left the country, which was surprising. So Michel Temer took office and began implementing neoliberal free market reforms in Brazil, wrecking the place, just wrecking the place economically. He had a horrendously low approval rating. The economy was getting worse. So there was an election that took place, and polls showed overwhelmingly that the population wanted Lula da Silva to be the new president. He had been the president before, and he had done a very good job. Dilma, things had not been going so well, so people wanted Lula da Silva back. So Lula da Silva was prevented from running by being charged with corruption and sent to jail. And they prevented him from running for president, even though polls showed that he would have won. So, of course, he didn't win. He was in jail. So Bolsonaro, the right-wing demagogue, the neocon, the advocate of free market neoliberal economics, the big supporter of Israel, the big friend of Donald Trump, he's known for nasty comments just like Trump, and not a nice fellow, tied to right-wing militias and such that assassinate leftists. Bolsonaro got elected. And things in Brazil have continued to get worse. The neoliberal free market reforms of Brazil have continued to make things worse. Things have gotten even worse. So after the fall of Dilma Rousseff, the neoliberal reforms came, things got worse. After the election of Bolsonaro, things got worse. We now know that the trial of Lula da Silva was a frame-up. It was revealed that the prosecutor and the judge were frequently texting each other and in cahoots collaborating throughout the trial. That was revealed. Lula da Silva has been released from prison. And after getting out of prison, he's become far, far more radical. He sounds more like a communist now. He's a big admirer of North Korea and such, and he's become very, very radical since getting out of jail. Bolsonaro continues to run Brazil into the ground. He took office on this platform that socialists are bad, socialists bring corruption, everything will be good if we bring free markets. Where is the free market miracle? Right? PragerU has a video, how socialism ruined Brazil. Well, you've had capitalism in Brazil for 5 years now. You've had a radical free market regime, and it has only made things worse. Only made things worse. China, socialist capitalism. Okay, it's only made things worse. So this is the latest episode in the continuing failure of capitalism in Brazil. The promise that all of Brazil's problems were due to socialism, were due to, the social democratic policies of Lula da Silva. They never had a change in property relations. It was more of a welfare capitalist state. But they never had a change in property relations. The Workers' Party under Lula da Silva was still very much presiding over capitalism. Right-wing union members convinced of socialism. But the question is, where is the free market miracle that was promised? Everyone's looking at the situation in Brazil, and it's with scandal after scandal, impoverishment after impoverishment, suffering after suffering. Thank you, Herb Bryant, for your super chat. Was the USSR socialist before the 1936 Constitution? Good question. All right, 1936 Constitution. So, there we go. I mean, look at Brazil. If free markets are supposed to bring prosperity, if Western capitalism is the answer, if neoliberalism and privatizations is the answer, look at Brazil. Look at Brazil. Just saying. We saw that the CIA worked with the Brazilian government to keep Lula da Silva from running. They kept him in jail. They falsely imprisoned a former president to keep him from running. Why do you think the USA is? People think the national anthem is racist. What was the one before that? Can someone repeat it? Can someone repeat the one before that? I missed it. National anthem racist. What was the other question? What was the other question? Free markets. They just work okay. Is that the question? No. What was the other question? U.S. hates competition with foreign markets. Why do you think there is a third awakening in the USA? Okay. Third awakening in USA. So yeah, Brazil, ever since they ousted the Social Democrats, the Workers' Party, and they put in neoliberal free market reforms, it's been a mess. It's been a mess ever since then. That doesn't fit the free market narrative that we're supposed to have. It should be a paradise now. That never happens. Neoliberalism and free market economics wrecks countries. It leads to massive poverty. Neoliberal economics is premised on the assumption that you can cut your way into economic growth. You cannot cut your way into economic growth. That does not happen. If you have 3 apples and you take 1 apple away, the result is 2 apples, and 2 apples is less than 3 apples. When you cut the jobs of government workers, when you eliminate social welfare programs, the result is everyone has less money and the economy gets worse. There's this magical belief that if rich people pay less taxes, somehow they'll then spend all that money and that'll lead to growth, and it doesn't happen. It does not happen for the simple reason that rich people invest their money, right? If people are millionaires and billionaires, they tend to spend whatever money they feel like spending, and they do that no matter what. But with their huge, massive sums of wealth, they invest it to make more money. And if the economy is bad and they're not going to get a return on their investment, they don't invest it. That's how these things work. So this notion that you can cut your way into economic growth is malarkey. It's absolute malarkey, and it has never worked anywhere in the world. Not in Chile, not all throughout South America during the 1990s. Did the persistent Western narrative that Gaddafi-funded terrorism have any truth in it? Okay. All right. You cannot cut your way into economic growth. Brazil is the latest example of that. And nobody, it's amazing. All these people who cry conspiracy theory, it is now proven that a sham trial was set up to prevent Lula da Silva from taking office. That the United States government and the Brazilian government and the right wing in Brazil collaborated to lock up a former president of Brazil, to put him in jail. They staged a trial. And it resulted in Bolsonaro, widely hated individual, hated by a lot more people than the far left, hated by many liberals and many progressives, many people around the world hate Bolsonaro, that there was an effort to prop up and install Bolsonaro to prevent Lula da Silva from becoming president of Brazil. This is a fact, folks. This is documented. This is not disputed. Okay? This is public record. The courts in Brazil have admitted that this happened. They released Lula from jail. We have the texts from the prosecutor in Brazil. They framed Lula da Silva for corruption. They gave him a kangaroo court sham trial. They locked him in jail, and they collaborated with the United States in order to do it, to prevent Bolsonaro from being defeated and to install Bolsonaro. That is a fact. These are well-documented realities. But conspiracy theory. This is documented. This is fact. And it has led, furthermore, to economic catastrophe in Brazil. Neoliberal economics has led to scandal after scandal, impoverishment. They've handled the pandemic horrendously. If you want to see the results of free market neoliberalism, if you want to see the results of Western capitalist regime change operations, take a look at Brazil. Take a look at Brazil. Take a look at Brazil. Right? This is the result of U.S. foreign meddling. Even Le Pen has said she is disgusted by Bolsonaro. And there you go. He's a disgusting figure. So the next time they're telling you, the USA needs to intervene, we need to bring free markets, they're the answer. Look at Brazil. Just look at Brazil. I've spent way too much time on this. So we're going to move on to our next item. India expelled half the staff at Pakistan's embassy in Delhi, accusing them of spying and working for terrorists. Pakistan's foreign ministry said it had to respond in kind, telling half the diplomats at India's embassy in Islamabad to leave. Yeah, what we're seeing here is the Modi government in India seems to be close to the Trump administration and to the White House. And they are having a confrontation with China right now. And China is heavily invested in India's longtime enemy, Pakistan. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is raising millions of people out of poverty. It's carrying out huge economic construction projects. It's doing amazing things. So India is taking action against Pakistan, and it's part of their action against China, that the Modi government has pivoted. For a while, they weren't sure if they were going to be with the USA or Russia and China. Modi has pretty solidly pivoted into the US camp, so he's being hostile to China. Meanwhile, Pakistan has pretty solidly moved into the Chinese camp and is aligned with China, and as a result, millions of people are being raised out of poverty. The Belt and Road Initiative, great things are happening. So as a result, we're seeing this confrontation break out. That's what you need to know there. Next item. After blowing up their joint liaison office, North Korea tried to de-escalate tensions with South Korea by saying it would not take any further action. North Korea had threatened to deploy troops to the demilitarized zone. What role did the left groups have in the election of Bolsonaro? Okay. Left groups. His election. The North had threatened to deploy troops to the demilitarized zone between the two countries to punish the South for letting activists send pamphlets critical of Kim Jong-un, the North's leader, over the border by balloon. Folks, North Korea was all ready to negotiate with the United States. And Donald Trump was all ready to negotiate with North Korea. And it happened. And it was historic. We saw, the first time, really, there was a full handshake between a U.S. president and a leader of North Korea. We saw Donald Trump actually go into North Korea. We saw that. It was amazing. I mean, it was such a hopeful moment. And Donald Trump, for his own very, very selfish reasons, wanted to be the guy to establish relations with North Korea. He had seen, I think Donald Trump is tied to a lot of American businessmen that hope that they can make a lot of money when North Korea opens up. Right? There was the legendary investor Jim Rogers. Jim Rogers, who is a libertarian free market guy. He goes on Fox News. He lives in Singapore. He's he's one of those cowboy tycoon investors. He's very heavily invested into China. He's a former associate of George Soros, but they had a falling out. And he was openly saying he wanted to invest in North Korea, right? And that when North Korea has its Deng Xiaoping moment, has some market reforms, opens up, gives up its nuclear weapons, sanctions lifted, that he was hoping that he and a lot of other Americans could make money in North Korea. And, well, Trump seemed to be aligned with folks who wanted that. But John Bolton, you'll remember, was doing his best to sabotage those talks. John Bolton, a few days before the talks, said that Trump was considering Libya-like solutions. Now, we all saw what happened in Libya, right? And John Bolton was doing everything he could to sabotage the talks from happening. And then we saw, during the talks, that U.S.-aligned people tied with the U.S. government in Spain invaded the North Korean embassy in Spain. Again, no media coverage over here, completely blacked out. But in Spain, it was widely understood people aligned with the United States went into the North Korean embassy, wrecked the place, beat people up, and rampaged the North Korean embassy. 4 shootings and racial segregation zones in Chaz. Okay. And it was pretty clear that there were figures within the Trump administration, within the wider U.S. government, that were doing everything they could to wreck the possibility of opening up and reform and better relations with North Korea. And the Democrats attacked Donald Trump for negotiating with North Korea. And the situation with North Korea has gotten worse. So North Korea made huge concessions. North Korea was willing to negotiate. And then the United States, it looks like Trump and his narrow group of capitalists that were hoping to invest there, they got outdone. And what was sad was that we saw the joint Olympic team, North and South Korean people playing together in the Olympics. And, the South Korean crowd at the Olympics cheering for the North Korean delegation. So much hope. So much hope. But ruined by the war makers. Ruined by the war makers. And it seems that for whatever reason, the Trump wing is more hostile to Iran, more hostile to Venezuela, but was open to better negotiations with North Korea. And the Obama wing was less hostile to Iran, slightly less hostile to Venezuela, definitely less hostile to Cuba, but more hostile to North Korea. This is the difference between our ruling class. It's not a question of should we destabilize the world and bring down regimes. It's which regimes and how and who benefits from it. And we're going to get into that later in the presentation tonight. But it's really depressing to see what happens. But hold tight. I mean, these things happen gradually. And who knows? I mean, things have zigged and zagged with North Korea. Are we heading towards a multipolar or bipolar world? Or a polycentric or unipolarity? Who would be the great powers and new major players? Okay. Multipolar world. Great powers. Major players. Alrighty. Next item. America has named 4 Chinese media organizations operating in the United States as government foreign missions. The State Department said that the 4, CCTV, China News Service, the People's Daily, and Global Times, produced propaganda for the Chinese Communist Party. Unbelievable. The targeting of foreign media in this country is shocking to me, right? Unbelievable, right? I mean, the New York Times, do you think they don't produce propaganda for the U.S. government? CNN, do you think they don't produce propaganda for the U.S. government? PBS, do you think BBC doesn't produce propaganda for the British government? You think all the media that was saying that Iraq had weapons of mass destruction when it didn't, do you think this is unbelievable. Why are Chinese news outlets being singled out, right? They've done this to Russian media, and they're doing it to Chinese media. Meanwhile, we've got Al Jazeera, which is media representing the Qatari monarchy. For a long time, one of the major shareholders of Fox News was Saudi Arabia. And with all the anti-Arab hate and anti-Islamic hatred among Fox News fans, you think there would have been a more scandalous thing about that. The targeting of media, the demonization of media in this country is unforgivably ridiculous. Even the most brutal regimes that we accuse of violating all kinds of human rights have New York Times reporters in them, have correspondents from the United States, from U.S. media in them. This is harassment. And it is an attempt to make sure that there is only one side of the story in the news, right? They don't like the fact that the Chinese government, when accused of things, you have Chinese media that can dig into the facts and maybe counter the narrative. They don't like that. They don't want there to be two sides of the story with China, or any country in the world, really, and that's what this is about. Frustrating. Egypt's president, Abdul Fattah al-Sisi, threatened to intervene in neighboring Libya if Turkish-backed militias capture Sirte, a strategic port from Khalifa Haftar, a rebellious general who is also backed by Russia. Wow, does that sound confusing? I mean, it does, but it's simple, pretty much. The militias have been moving towards General Haftar's heartland in the east, right? Again, just like with Brazil, Libya had a socialist economy under Muammar Gaddafi, and they had a state centrally planned economy. They raised millions of people out of poverty. They built the world's largest irrigation system. They had the highest life expectancy on the African continent. That's according to the CIA World Factbook. Huge amounts of education. They wiped out illiteracy. They industrialized the country. They were greening the desert with their huge irrigation system. amazing economic results of socialism in Libya. Socialism in Libya has been toppled. The USA went in there with NATO bombs, and now Libya has joined the free market. And ever since then, just like Brazil with its neoliberal reforms, it's been a disaster, right? And we have different factions fighting each other. And now, Khalifa Haftar, this general, who people say is tied to Russia, he's trying to bring some level of stability. We know members of the Gaddafi family like him. Other people say he's pretty corrupt, but it seems pretty clear that that many people think that he's someone who could possibly bring stability to the country. So we have Turkish-backed militias, Turkey Muslim Brotherhood-backed militias that are fighting against him. It's a disaster, right? Under socialism, people were trying to get into Libya. Gaddafi had a program that any African could come to Libya and be guaranteed employment. Did you foresee getting argumentium ad ridicule so prophetically last live? We're going to talk about that. Yes, I'll get to that. Don't worry. It's not the focus, but we'll get to that. Oh, plenty to talk about. Yeah, I mean, in Libya, joining the free market has been a disaster. Now that it's part of the free market, people are trying to get out of Libya. People are drowning in the Mediterranean, trying to get out of Libya on boats, trying to get to Europe. Things are so bad. People were trying to get into Libya under socialism. People are now trying to get out of Libya because capitalism and the free market has made things so bad. Now they don't even have a strong central government. They've got different factions fighting against each other. Chaos, instability. Egypt may be intervening there. Turkish militias. It's a nightmare. Free markets, regime change have wrecked Libya. Next. The IMF has drastically reduced its outlook for the world economy, projecting that it will contract by 4.9% this year. The downward revision was across the board. All regions will suffer shrinkage. America's GDP is now expected to fall by 8%. Britain and the European areas by 10%. Japan's by 5.8%. Most emerging markets will fare a little bit better. China is forecast to grow by 1%. Now, there's a couple things to take out of this, right? You expect me to just say, oh, see, socialism in China is doing better, capitalism in the West is failing. Yeah, fine, right? But you know that already. That's pretty obvious from what I read you. China was able to, with its state-run, centrally planned economy, was able to organize to meet the pandemic better than the Western countries. That's very, very obvious. But, and it's the same for Vietnam, the same for Laos, the same for, the Kerala areas of India where the Communist Party is in power. Sure. But that's not the point. That's not the point. That is not the point. Okay, beyond that, I want you to look back at the Foreign Affairs magazine of the Council on Foreign Relations. That's the central foreign policy think tank of the United States. They published an issue a couple years back called Slow Growth. Slow Growth. It was all about how the world economy needs to transition to accepting what they call slow growth, right? And this idea that we're going to have economic booms and people raised out of poverty and, poverty alleviation and mass construction and all of this, we need to get past that. It's not good for the environment, not good for global warming, not really realistic in our time. We need to have slow growth, right? This is what the ultra-rich, the ultra-rich, the richest people in the world, right? The oil bankers, the Rockefellers, the Carnegies, the DuPonts, the Morgans. This is what they want. They want a slow growth global economy. And this pandemic has moved the world in that direction very significantly, right? We are now experiencing a slow growth economy, meaning we don't have dramatic growth, we have slow growth. And for certain capitalists that are already at the top, a slow growth economy is far more preferable because it means no one will usurp them. They will stay at the top and things will gradually, slowly grow, but they stay at the top. Big dramatic growth results in turning over the apple cart, right, and changing the world economy. It may result in multipolarity and countries rising up to be global superpowers and having more influence around the world. They don't want that. The prevailing view among the ultra-rich, the globalist faction among the ruling class, is slow growth. They're already at the top, they want to stay at the top, and everything can just kind of move slowly. And that's what you need to understand is that for the ultra-rich faction, that was facing competition from fracking companies, from lower-level capitalists, but also from Russia, from China, from Venezuela, from Iran. The pandemic has been very good for them. And there's another news item about that as well. The Pentagon released a list of 20 companies and state-controlled enterprises it believes are owned and supported by the Chinese army. The publication of the list, which includes Huawei, is mostly symbolic. Congress required the Pentagon to catalog entities with ties to China's armed forces in 1999, but no document has ever been made before. Well, here's the thing, folks. First of all, a couple things here. First of all, you would think, so why the Chinese military? Why not the Chinese government itself? Well, the Chinese military, as folks may be aware, is not directly accountable to the elected government of China. The Chinese military is the armed wing of the Chinese Communist Party. Bet you didn't know that. But the Chinese army is not called the Army of China. It's called the People's Liberation Army. And it receives its orders directly from the Communist Party. So entities that are tied to the Chinese military are going to be much more politically aligned with the party, right? Every business in China has a relationship with the state, right? That's very clear, right? If you're a business in China, you're going to have some relationship with the state. There's going to be some level of state ownership. You're going to have, people from the government that direct you and tell you what to do. Not a free market country at all, right? The economy is centered around the state, and the state controls the economy. But if you're tied to the military, that means you're tied directly to the party. And that's what that's about. But what I thought was interesting is, they've been going after Huawei, the world's largest telecommunications manufacturer, which is a cooperative under Chinese law for a long time. But what I think would be interesting is imagine if a list were published of all the businesses in the United States that are directly tied to the U.S. military. Think about it. Amazon would be on that list. Amazon does all kinds of stuff for the Department of Defense. All of the telecommunications companies would be tied into that. They do military intelligence research. They've been revealed to be cooperating with the NSA and the CIA and all of that. Let's think. Every media company would be on there because they have a relationship and they have people embedded in the Pentagon, and they send people to be embedded with U.S. military divisions and all of that. All the weapons manufacturers would be on that list. Think about it, right? And think about how ridiculous it would be if some country said, well, we'll do business with America, but we won't do business with any company in America that has a relationship with the U.S. military. Think about that. Think about all the major players in the American economy that would exclude, right? It really makes this list a little bit silly now, doesn't it? Think about it, right? It's like, is Amazon a wing of the American military? I mean, it does work, contracts for the American military, but is the guy who delivers, a new book you ordered to your home, is he a military guy? Is he a spy for the U.S. Department of Defense? Don't think so. But with this list, they're trying to give you the implication that because Huawei Technologies has a relationship with the Chinese military, that your phone, if you buy a Huawei phone, Xi Jinping personally hears all your phone calls. That's ridiculous, right? They wouldn't say that about Amazon. They wouldn't say that about any corporation. I mean, the list of companies in the United States that have ties to the American military is massive. But they wouldn't try to imply that everyone who works at those companies, it's a ridiculous allegation. But again, when you declare a country to be bad, like they've done with China, like they've done with Russia, like they've done with Venezuela, like they've done with Iran, all the rules change. And suddenly things that would just be normal for other countries become suspicious. Their media outlets are propaganda, right? Any company that does business with their military must be a wing of the military. I mean, this is classic propaganda tactics. Declare someone the bad guy, and all the rules, all the norms fade away. And that's how these things work. And the last point that I wanted to make from this week in the world. The pandemic has stranded many workers at home and sent millions to the unemployment lines. But it has also meant that tech giants have done as well as home offices are kitted out with equipment and people communicate remotely. The soaring stock of those companies and others has increased the wealth of their bosses, and as a consequence, America has gained nearly 30 new billionaires. since March, according to the Institute for Policy Studies. The top 5 are thought to be 26% richer collectively than before COVID-19. And that fits what I've been telling you before about the ultra-rich and how the ultra-rich have benefited from this pandemic because it has demobilized. It has demobilized their competitors, and it has resulted in securing their monopoly. And that's the divide. And that's why the open-up protests were sponsored by lower levels of capital. That's why the fracking companies are almost dead while big oil is there. And that points to the big divide within the ruling class. And who represents different factions and why there is so much strife within the American ruling class right now. There's one more article from The Economist I wanted to bring your attention to. I thought it was amusing. It's on page 17 of the latest issue of The Economist. There's an article, Viva Las Vegas, Nuclear Weapons. It starts talking about history. It says, the cars drove an hour out of Las Vegas and lined up along the edge of the Yucca Flat on April 22nd, 1952. They pointed towards the desert as if it were a drive-in cinema. Newsmen, along with Walter Cronkite, had gathered for a killer performance. This is the greatest show on earth, an Army captain assured soldiers in the trenches. It was a nuclear test. Nuclear tests are traditionally done in Nevada. But of course, not anymore. September 23rd, 1992, the president shook. The ground shook for the last time. President George Herbert Walker Bush, following the Soviet Union's example the previous year, joined a moratorium on nuclear weapons testing that has since been extended by every president since. Yet, some fear that America's 28-year nuclear lull may be drawing to a close. All right, there's open talk now about resuming nuclear tests. That's a nuclear test in Nevada. And that's the American people watching with their little, watching the nuclear bomb go off in the middle of the Nevada desert. And June 23rd, the State Department told Congress that it suspected Russia had conducted nuclear weapons-related experiments that created nuclear yield. However, and this is The Economist, okay? This is The Economist magazine saying this. This is not anyone tied to Russia. This is The Economist. Quote, most experts say the accusations are thin gruel. America itself does in Nevada much of what it says that China is doing at Lop Nur. So The Economist magazine is basically admitting that these allegations that Russia and China are violating the nuclear test treaty is bull honky. Right? Most experts say these accusations are thin gruel. Now, you think that might be a bit of a scandal, right? Our government is on the brink of restarting nuclear tests, right? We're going to start testing nuclear weapons again. We're going to start the arms race up again, right? We're going to start the arms race up again. And our justification for doing it is, well, Russia and China are already doing it. And most experts, according to even the right-wing Economist, yeah, that's not really true. The American government's just making that up. Really? So our leaders are lying to us in order to restart the arms race. And that's just passing fact. And then, classic, in 1997, a Russian test turned out to be an earthquake. Right here, folks. I'm not making this up. The U.S. government, in 1997, claimed that Russia had done a nuclear test, and it was an earthquake. They lied. I mean, again, is this the Daily Worker? Is this the People's Progressive Communist Weekly? Is this the anti-American news? This is The Economist. Our leaders have lied to us to try and restart the arms race. In 1997, they said that Russia had done a nuclear test, and it was really an earthquake. Most experts say that the accusations coming from the Pentagon right now are, quote, thin gruel. This is The Economist magazine that is saying this. Conspiracy theory, Caleb. These are conspiracy theories. Oh, you're spreading conspiracy theory. I'm reading to you from The Economist that there is a section of the American ruling class that wants to make money from resuming nuclear tests. Now, Nevada. Nevada. Folks, Nevada. Nevada. Folks, who is the biggest real estate owner in Nevada? Who's the top billionaire real estate owner in Nevada? What's his name? Sheldon Adelson. Who is he a big supporter of? Donald Trump. When did talk of resuming nuclear weapons tests begin? After Trump got elected. Folks, just telling you. I mean, there's a divide, right? Now, Donald Trump seems to be very, very much a fan of the weapons industry. He's trying to build an Arab NATO in the Middle East so he can sell lots of weapons to Saudi Arabia and all of its allies. He's escalating tension with Iran so he can polarize the Middle East and have a new Cold War in the Middle East and sell lots of weapons. He's ripped up the INF treaty with Russia. And yeah, I mean, the fact that The Economist is passingly admitting that so much lying has been done to lay the basis for opening up of nuclear tests shows you how dangerous our leaders really are. I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. I'm certainly not a fan of Joe Biden. And there are divisions in our ruling class. That's all I wanted to show you from The Economist magazine. But folks, I did a video a while back called Who's Behind Joe Biden? And I talked about divisions in the American ruling class. I talked about how there are two factions right now. There is what you can call the managerial bourgeoisie, and there is what you can call the entrepreneurial bourgeoisie. There is the ultra-rich and the rich. The ultra-rich are already at the top of capitalism. They're at the top of the food chain, and they would like to stabilize things to stay at the top. These are the slow-growth capitalists. These are the ones that want to keep everything stable so that they stay at the top. They want to declare human progress, game over, they're at the top. They tend to favor, more of a welfare state, more efforts towards stabilization. They're even talking about UBI now. They're just trying to stabilize society so they can stay at the top. And then you have the entrepreneurial bourgeoisie. And they feel like they're not part of the club. They're rich, but they're not part of the club. They feel like the government and the game has been rigged against them, and they want free markets and privatizations. Yes, bad empanada. I'm going to get to that, but I'm writing it down. Yes, but it's in my opening spiel here. I'm going to get to it eventually. Calm down, folks. I know you all want fight. I'm getting to it. Don't worry. All right. And this is a division. Between the entrepreneurial bourgeoisie and the managerial bourgeoisie. And it's a long-standing division. Trump represents probably the majority of the rich people in America that feel like they've been locked out of the club. Sheldon Adelson is one of those people. The Koch brothers are one of those people. The fracking companies are among those elements. The hotel chain owners. Hobby Lobby, big supporters of Donald Trump. They own the craft stores, Hobby Lobby. And those folks feel like they're not part of the club. And the four super major oil companies, right? ExxonMobil, BP, Chevron, and Shell Oil. That's the Rockefeller family, the DuPonts, the Morgans. Those elements feel like they are at the top. They have huge think tanks and huge efforts. They are the Eastern establishment of American politics. That's the division between the American ruling class right now. It's the ultra-rich versus the rich. And it's been going on. And I watched some of Joe Biden's remarks today. And again, it fit everything that I've been telling you all. Right? Joe Biden said he wants to, quote, restore relations with the World Health Organization. Joe Biden criticized Donald Trump for encouraging folks to open up the economy, open up the economy at risk of public health. He urged people to wear a mask. He's a manager. He represents that managerial faction. He wants to keep things calm so certain people stay at the top, and slow growth. That's what he's all about. And there's this current controversy right now. It's one of those controversies that just wants to make you pull your hair out. And what's happening is that the New York Times has claimed that the Russian government is paying bounties to the Taliban to kill U.S. soldiers. And the Russian government has come out and said that's ridiculous. Anyone with half a brain realizes that doesn't make any sense. Why would that make any sense? Why would Russia want to destabilize a country in Central Asia? Right? They already have enough problems with the drug cartels there. They have enough problems with the terrorist groups that have come in there. Russia wants a stable Afghanistan. So why in the world would they encourage more violence and terrorism? It doesn't make any sense. It makes absolutely no sense from a geopolitical perspective. There is no reason that Russia would do this. Regardless, Joe Biden won't even say he believes it. Right? You'll notice some of the statements from Joe Biden even have, if this is true, it's like Joe Biden won't even fully come out and say he believes this. But the scandal is that supposedly Donald Trump didn't alert the world about this scandal. Well, Donald Trump has said it was not credible. And so, based on that, there is a torrent of liberals screaming that Donald Trump is soft on Russia. And it's painful to watch. It's painful to watch. And that's the big issue here. But again, it points to divisions within the ruling class, right? It points toward divisions over Russia. And, Maduro, right? We know Joe Biden has accused Trump of being soft on Maduro. And we know that Joe Biden has accused Donald Trump of and now he's accusing him of covering up for Russia against this scandal. If this is true, yeah. But folks, this points toward an ongoing thesis that I have had, which, yes, came up in an argument I had with another internet personality yesterday. This concept of the synthetic left. The synthetic left. Folks, why do I wear a suit? Why do I wear a suit? Why wear a suit? Didn't used to wear suits. I was a member of one of the small communist groups in the United States for a long time. Did a lot of protesting, had really long hair, had a beard, was part of Occupy Wall Street. I finally got a haircut at one point in 2013. And then later in the year of 2013, I went to the World Festival of Youth and Students in Quito, Ecuador. And I went to this huge gathering of communists from around the world. I met communists from Greece. I met communists from Guatemala. I met communists from Vietnam, the Ho Chi Minh Communist Youth Union. I met communists from China. I met communists from Russia. I met communists from Ukraine. I met communists from Zimbabwe. I met communists from the Arab world, from Syria. I met communists from Angola. I met communists from all over the world, Sri Lanka, places like that. This festival was full of communists wearing suits. And I talked to these communists from around the world, from Africa, from Asia, from Latin America, and I discovered that this was a totally different breed than the people I'd been marching around and protesting with in the United States. These communists that I met from the developing world did not fit either of the two categories of communists in America. In America, if you want to be in the USA, I should say, if you want to be a communist, you have two choices. On the one hand, you can basically be a self-hating communist. You can just be a liberal, work for the Democratic Party, and maybe once a year read some Marx or go to a May Day parade or something. But for the most part, just kind of give up on actually trying to implement socialism. You can be just kind of a normal Democrat liberal who happens to have communism in their like a skeleton in their closet. That's a lot of communists, right, in the United States. They seem inseparable from regular Democrats. They live normal, regular capitalist lives, and they're just Democrats who happen to have this communist thing, But then, if you don't want to do that, right? If that doesn't sound appealing to you, if you really do want to believe in communism, and you don't want to just kind of go through the motions once a year, you can be a fringe extremist, right? You can sell newspapers about Trotsky, you can burn the American flag, you can run around screaming and yelling and, throwing bricks at police officers and doing crazy stuff. Those are the two options you have in the United States if you want to be a communist. You can be a crazy extremist who no one listens to, or you can abandon your beliefs and just kind of forget about it. And what I met in Quito, Ecuador, was a totally different breed. These folks were not fringe elements. I met with the Communist Party of India Marxist that controls an entire region in India of Kerala. They wear suits. I met communists from Angola that are the ruling party of a country, the MPLA. I met communists from Vietnam, ruling party of a country. I met communists from Russia that control whole regions. These folks are not irrelevant, but they're not sellouts either. You talk to them, they know Marx up and down, backwards and forwards. They can explain to you in detail how their policies are guided by Marxism, Leninism. They have studied Marx, they've studied Lenin, they are revolutionaries through and through. It was a totally different brand. It wasn't crazy extremists, and it wasn't sellouts and people who abandoned Marxism. It was professional revolutionaries. Professional revolutionaries who actually want to get something done, but haven't sold out their beliefs. That's who I met. And it was a life-changing experience. And that forced me to think, because every communist that I spoke to at that festival asked me almost the same question, which is, what's wrong with American communists? What's wrong with American communists? I got that same question over and over again. What is wrong with American communists? What's wrong with American communists? And I kept pondering that because I knew that there was something wrong with American communists. And there was something wrong with American communists. Something very, very wrong with American communists. In fact, I knew that there was something wrong with American communists. So much of what I had seen over the course of my activism in the United States and being a member of a communist group was weird. There is an intrinsic belief in a lot of Marxist circles that average Americans are the enemy, right? That average American working people are ignorant, foolish people, that the working class of the United States is bought off and they're squares and they're not revolutionary enough. There's this contempt for the broad masses of people in leftist groups. And there's this desire on the part of many American communists to not look professional. There's this desire to look sloppy. This desire, people get together and they almost boast about the hardship that they've experienced in their life. Look, my life was hard. No, my life is hard. No, my life is hard. I'm a victim. No, I'm a victim. No, I'm a bigger victim than you. And it's really bizarre. American communists are very, very strange. There's a huge dose of counterculture, of hippieism. There's a huge dose of assuming that average Americans will never be won to our beliefs, that we're this fringe element of people. Most Americans are evil. We're the good one. There's all this confusion. What's this about? Why did it happen? Well, there's a number of factors involved. I mean, there's the fact that you always have a revolutionary intelligentsia, no matter what the country is like. You always have a revolutionary intelligentsia, that exists, that's separate from the broad masses of people, and that, in order for a revolution to happen, that revolutionary intelligentsia has to find a way of mobilizing the broad masses of people. That's what Is to Be Done, the pamphlet by Lenin, is all about. That's the history of Bolshevism. That's the history of Mao in China. How do you get that revolutionary intelligentsia of kind of radical intellectuals to be able to, mobilize millions of people? It's a struggle. But it's worse than that. There was a program in the 1960s, 1950s it started, called the Congress for Cultural Freedom. And it was a CIA program, and the CIA now brags about it, in which the CIA worked to effectively destabilize and confuse the revolutionary intelligentsia. And they did this by funding anti-communist leftism, right? And they did everything they could to promote, subsidize, and do everything they could to highlight certain left-wing voices that were anti-communist. They funded in the United States a magazine called Partisan Review magazine, and they brought us the work of Susan Sontag and Hannah Arendt, right? In Germany, they had Der Monat, and they brought us the work of Theodor Adorno, and they brought us the work of all kinds of people. Read about Melvin Lasky. They subsidized all kinds of left-wing thinkers and intellectuals and artists who were anti-Soviet. And in the process, along with the Rockefeller foundations, the Rockefeller think tanks, they distorted and changed left-wing politics. And this is an open secret. Whole books have been written about this. There's a book by Finks, How the CIA Hoodwinked Some of America's Greatest Writers. There's all kinds of publications about this. The Congress for Cultural Freedom is a well-documented reality. And if you look at the left-wing intellectuals that were promoted by the U.S. CIA, they had a distinctly different view, a very distinctly different view of what it meant to be a socialist and what it meant to be a revolutionary than the Soviet Union did. Hannah Arendt, one of her main themes was to equate the Soviet Union with Nazi Germany. Right? They were both totalitarian states. That was one of her big themes. And she writes this book about Adolf Eichmann in Jerusalem. Adolf Eichmann is the Nazi who was arrested in Argentina and taken to Jerusalem and charged for the crimes he committed during the Holocaust and hanged. And if you read her book, Eichmann in Jerusalem, her charge against Adolf Eichmann, right, so the banality of evil, is Adolf Eichmann's a normal person. And deep down, normal people are evil, right? That's basically what she argues. Normal people, average normal people, deep down, are evil. And you need smart intellectuals to control them because average people deep down are all Nazis. That's basically what Hannah Arendt is arguing, right? It's supposed to be this lesson about anyone could go along with evil. But if you look at it, she argues in her thing that deep down, all people are basically Nazis. They're all hateful. Adolf Eichmann is just a normal guy. He's not an evil Nazi. He's an average normal person. And that's why we need to control average normal people, right? You look at Susan Sontag's writing. She starts writing about fascism. And she says the Soviet Union is more fascist than Nazi Germany. Reddit purges. All right, writing it down. The Soviet Union is more fascist than Nazi Germany, she says. And that it's effective fascism. It's fascism with a human face. And it's fascist because they believe in gymnastics. And it's fascist because the state represents the will of the people. And that there's this sudden understanding that what it means to be a leftist, isn't that you fight for the working class and the majority against the billionaires and bankers. It doesn't mean that you fight for the banks, factories, and industries to be organized to serve the people and not profits. No. That being a leftist is about deconstruction. It's about tearing things down. It's about not organizing society, not having clear beliefs, not believing in objective reality and truth, because all of that's fascist. It's about defining individualism, highlighting competing narratives. This all gives way to postmodernism. The belief that there is no objective reality, that there is no grand narrative for humanity, that truth comes through deconstruction and taking apart ideas, while at the same time highlighting competing narratives. That's postmodernism. That's Derrida, right? That's Michel Foucault, right? And if you look at those folks, they replaced Lenin's understanding of imperialism. Imperialism is an economic system in which, Wall Street and London keep developing countries poor so that they can stay rich. They replaced that with a concept called cultural imperialism, where, if China builds, railways in Tibet and builds power plants, that's robbing these ancient traditional Tibetan people that live without electricity of their traditional way. It's arguing that primitivism is beautiful, while progress, the concept of progress itself, is oppressive, and that leftism suddenly becomes this group of people who want deconstruction, don't believe in objective reality, don't believe in truth, and accuse anyone who believes in truth, anyone who works hard for a goal, anyone who has strong beliefs, of being a fascist. Right? That's basically what leftism has become. It has become a deconstruction cult. It has become a cult of tearing things down. It has become a group of people that love chaos and oppose order. It has become a group of people that say that there is no truth. It's become a group of people that think that objective reality is a fascist conspiracy. And it has not become a group of people fighting for the majority, the working class, to seize control of the means of production and organize it rationally to raise people out of poverty. Instead, leftism has become a vehicle for alienated intellectuals to try and deconstruct society, to control those broad masses of people that deep down are evil. They're all Eichmann deep down, to fight against any objective reality, because that's fascist. So anyone who tells you anything is true is fascist, and to move human history backwards. And you combine that, of course, with radical environmentalism, right? Not with Malthusianism. Right? That human progress is bad for Mother Earth. It's bad for Mother Earth. I mean, there's just too many people in the world. The poor people are having too many children. We can't raise people out of poverty because that'll lead to greater pollution. And you get this death cult, this Malthusian deconstructionist death cult that calls itself the left, that has taken over. Right? Marxism, Leninism has been pushed into the background. Socialism, actual socialism, non-Marxist socialism has been pushed into the background. Leftism has become a deconstructionist cult. It's become a group of people that want to tear things down. And those people don't like me, because I am one of those suit communists. I, Caleb Maupin, am a real Marxist. I'm a real socialist. I'm a real leftist. I am like the communists I met in Ecuador. I'm like the communists in Zimbabwe. I'm like the communists in India. I wear a suit. I want to help my people and my country. I want to raise people in my community out of poverty. I want to organize the economy rationally. I want to end racism and bigotry. I want peace with countries around the world. I want to end the economic system of imperialism and replace it with a world with win-win cooperation, where countries are trading with each other on a mutually beneficial basis. I want an economy where the banks, factories, and industries are organized to serve public good and not profits. All of that is something that the synthetic left opposes. They don't want that. If millions of people are raised out of poverty, that leads to more pollution. If society is mobilized to control the economy, they're building things. They're not tearing things down. And people are cooperating to get things done. If they have common values, that means they might have a common truth. And that's totalitarian, objective reality, right? That this entity that has been created as a result of all kinds of funding and manipulation and CIA activities, this entity that calls itself left, the synthetic left, serves not the working class. No. It serves the ultra-rich. It's slow growth politics. Slow growth politics. Like I was telling you at the beginning, the people that have benefited from this damn pandemic. The ultra-rich, the managerial bourgeoisie. That is who the synthetic left serves. And it's about holding back human history, holding back human progress, declaring that we have only slow growth, reducing the human population, destabilizing, and holding back human progress. And that's basically what the synthetic left has become. It has become a mob. It has become the political wing of the ultra-rich and their struggle to end human progress and stabilize and control the world and beat back countries like Russia, China, Vietnam, Cuba, Iran, Venezuela that have raised themselves up out of poverty. Keep the world centered around Wall Street and London. Keep the world poor. Begin the process of making the Western countries even poorer. It is their long-term vision of building a world that is carefully controlled. That is basically what the synthetic left has become. And I oppose that. I oppose that. I, instead, think that we can do better than this. I'm an optimist. And socialism, for me, is deeply optimistic. It's an optimistic ideology. It means that we can reorganize society in a rational way. We can have unlimited, sustainable growth. And we can have an end to the exploitation of human beings by other human beings. And we can eventually move toward a world that doesn't even need a government because so much material abundance has been created. That's Marxism. Marxism is a progressive ideology. It is an optimistic ideology. It is a hopeful ideology. It's based on the belief that human beings are creative creatures. Human beings struggle and work hard to fight for their own interests. Marxism is a hopeful, materialistic ideology. It is optimistic. And the synthetic left is full of pessimism. The world is about to end. Everything's getting worse. The world is going to hell. It's bad for the environment. We need to go backwards. Things used to be better before we got technology. I mean, the synthetic left is not optimistic at all. It's very pessimistic, dark. Destruction is good. Tear things down. Disorder. The synthetic left's worldview is very, very dark and primitive and hopeless. And so, of course, they don't like me. I am an actual Marxist. These forces are part of the cult, the death cult, the synthetic left, the pessimistic, destruction, tear things down cult. And so, of course, they hate suits. Why would I want to dress respectably? Why would I want to look like somebody who's taken seriously? I should be wearing ripped jeans. I should be running around breaking windows. I should be burning the American flag. I should be telling average Americans that they're racist Euro settlers and who deserve to die. I should, that's what these people think, right? There's this death cult, this destructive death cult that has replaced leftism. That is the basis for my arguments with this empanada guy. That's what it's about. And the sad thing is, though, here's the sad thing. This is the sad thing about all this, is that for a lot of people, this isn't just about politics. It's about their own life. For a lot of people who get into synthetic leftism, they're deeply depressed people. They're deeply hopeless people. They don't think that there's a future better than today. They don't feel good about their life. They don't feel like things could be getting better. They just feel angry. They feel like maybe they want to be a martyr. The greatest example of this, right? Right? How do you become popular? How do you become popular among synthetic leftists? Lose, right? Why is Rosa Luxemburg allowed among these people? These people, if you say you like Stalin, they lose their minds. If you like Mao, they lose their minds. You like Castro, they lose their minds. Rosa Luxemburg. Why do they like Rosa Luxemburg? She lost. Oh, she's safe. Why do they like the anarchists of Spain? They lost. Oh, they're safe. Why do they like Peter Kropotkin? He lost. He's safe. That's how this stuff works. When you win and actually start building, actually start getting things done, the New York Times accuses you of violating human rights. And at that point, it becomes somewhat toxic to like you. And so these folks no longer like leaders who actually win. They don't like socialist leaders who actually win. They like people who epically lose because it's part of their mindset. They don't want to actually win. They want to feel good in their isolation from society. They want to feel like martyrs. They want to feel like the rest of the world doesn't understand them, but they're right and the rest of the world is wrong. And they want to celebrate their isolation and be proud of their isolation from the broad masses of people. They want to feel special. They want to feel better about themselves. They want to celebrate their own weakness and their own backwardness. And so they like people who lost. They like martyrs. They like people that are untainted by actually winning in the real world. That's the issue here. And if you're in a group like that, if you're among the synthetic left, you begin to think that way. you know? Folks, I, Caleb Maupin, give you permission to have success. These are hard economic times. These are hard economic times. So many people are suffering. But if you are able to get yourself a decent job and take care of your family, I give you permission to do that. If you are able to start a business, a small store, a small enterprise, and able to make some money and take care of your family, I give you permission to do that. Working people in this country have been suffering for so long, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with working people wanting to improve their conditions. I give you permission to have a good life. I give you permission. And in fact, I would encourage you to demand that your government and your leaders make it easier for you to have better conditions. I think that you should be demanding that your government hire the unemployed and put them to work, making a better country, repaving our crumbling roads, purifying our water, building new universities, building new schools. You should be demanding that your government do more to make you successful. Furthermore, I think you should be demanding that our government take public ownership of the oil and natural gas and coal and timber and use the money to make you more successful, to build more schools, more universities, more hospitals, more infrastructure, more high-speed trains. Furthermore, I think the government should be facing a mass demand by the population. The public should start demanding that the government take control of the lending of money and start lending money in a way that helps you to be more successful. Invest in your communities. Invest in your towns and your municipalities, not in a way that makes a private banker likely to make money. Have the banks under public control, the printing of money under public control, get rid of the Federal Reserve, have public control of banking so we can strategically plan out the economy so that you can be more successful. Furthermore, I feel like in order to ensure that you are more successful, I think the government should guarantee you the right to housing, the right to health care, the right to education, so that you don't have to worry about these things. Hear, hear, says Heavy Dukes. Yes, you shouldn't have to live in fear of losing your health care if you lose your job. You shouldn't have to live in fear of losing your home. You should be able to unleash your creativity, not terrified of living in poverty. I want you to be successful. I want you to unleash your human potential. That is the goal of socialism. I want you to accomplish amazing things, and I want the state not to be protecting big bankers and billionaires, but to be protecting you and unleashing you and enabling you to be creative, enabling you to live up to your potential, enabling you to carry out and conduct miracles. The government should be finding the Einsteins and the Mozarts among our youth and empowering them, not sending them to shitty, falling down schools. I want the government, the state, to be unleashed to fight for the people. I want a government of action that will fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. That's what we need. This is an optimistic view of socialism. I'm describing socialism to you right now. I'm describing a state that controls the economy in order to unleash economic growth and human progress. This is the kind of socialism I believe in. It's an optimistic socialism. It's a socialism about unleashing human potential. It's a socialism about communities that have long been downtrodden and suffering, being unleashed to do great things. It's a socialism about fighting racism, fighting sexism, fighting bigotry of all kinds. That's what it is. That's what socialism is about. However, if your socialism is a socialism of pessimism, a socialism of poverty, a socialism of hopelessness, a socialism of tearing things down, a socialism of deconstruction, a socialism that doesn't like the paintings of Diego Rivera, but instead prefers the work of Jackson Pollock. If it's a socialism that would prefer pornography to the work of Sergei Eisenstein, it's a socialism that says beauty is totalitarian, but ugliness should be celebrated, I'm not the guy for you. I wear a suit. I'm optimistic. I want you to be successful. Guilty as charged. Guilty. Guilty as charged. And folks, on that note, I will take a sip of orange juice, and we can start doing our roll call. What are your thoughts on countries like China and Russia embracing blockchain technology as well as giant... Okay, writing it down. Brian Lee in Harlan County, Kentucky. Las Vegas. Ken from Connecticut. Germany. Larry Chavista China Chu in Albany, New York. Rusty Culver City, Florida, USA. Robert from Hawaii, Ukraine. Wilmington, California. Las Angeles, Sam Levin. Vicksburg, Mississippi. Springfield, Missouri. Sam from Missouri. Hills from the Bronx. Bayonne, New Jersey. Cincinnati, Ohio here. Michael in Ithaca. Long Island, New York. Jack Dundee. Washington Street, Killeen, Texas. Atlanta. Bend, Dover, Idaho. FVK, Memphis. Long Island, New York. Virginia. Queens, New York City. Georgia. Chan in Georgia. Right? Totally agree with you, Caleb. We should have the same problems here with the synthetic left in Australia, too. Well, thank you, David Fox. And it's a global problem, and we are challenging it ourselves. Fresh Meadows, New York. Spain. Liverpool, UK. Who else is with us tonight? Names and locations. Austin Craft, Austin, Texas. Majori, Dayton, Ohio. Argentina, the Netherlands. Fredonia. Alex in Salem. Shanghai, China. Aaron Huang. Mo in Pomona, California. Dushanbe, don't know where that is. Logan. Planet Tanky. Iran. Phoenix, Arizona. CPI Associate Arthur Porter. Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Pensacola, Shaniqua from Buffalo, New York. Bendigo, Australia. Pirate Alex, Cleveland. Dan from Iran. Who else is with us tonight? Portland, Oregon. Montevideo, Uruguay. Melbourne, Australia. John Doe in Australia. Southern California, Tommy Ferraz. RJ in Jackson, Florida. Ali from Toronto. Victoria. Love you, man, says John Edwards. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Glendale, California. Ramses from Charlotte. Tajikistan. Springfield, Missouri. The depths of Florida. Names and locations, folks. I'll call you out as I see you. I will call you out as I see you. Kerala, India. Very good. Who else is with us this evening? Who else is with us this evening? Who else? Anyone else? Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. San Diego, California. Good stuff. Pouring some more orange juice. Jimmy from Central New York. South Korea. Seattle. San Diego. Tuning in from South Louisiana, says Jacob Maxey. Welcome, Jacob. Good times. Good times. You inspire me to stay optimistic, says Megan Coleman. I'm glad to do that. Absolutely glad to do that. Very, very glad to do that. What do you think about Hélène de Menost? Whoa. Went by really, really quick. Really quick. Someone wants to repeat that. Rich in Oakland, California. Someone wants to repeat the super chat. It was a big, long one. Rich in Oakland, California. Tyler, Texas. Belfast. The new European rights, pan-European paganism, and revolt against the EU are a promising political movement. All right. Oh, boy. All right. the new right, pan-Euro paganism. Alrighty, who else is here? Let me call out your names and locations as I see them. Names and locations as I see them. Anybody else? Anybody else want me to call out your name and location before I get into super chat territory? Before I start super chat talking. Harold Sullivan, Florida. Mora, New York. Darth Buddha. The future is the great... Oh, well, there you go. Perth, Western Australia. Bristol, Wisconsin. Robert Coates. Coates, maybe. Portland, Oregon. Portland, Oregon is with us. Iowa, Augie Hubbard. Very, very good. Matthew from Vosh's basement. Oh, well, it's nice of him to let you crash there. Very nice of him. Very kind of him. What a swell guy. Robert Coates. He is silent, he tells us. Okay, very, very good. Okay. All right, folks. So we are going to get into our super chats for Julian from Texas. Julian Salazar. Welcome, welcome. Anybody else? Speak now or forever hold your name and location, because I will not be. Jeff from France. Welcome, Jeff. All right. All right, so let's do these super chats, shall we? The first one was about the conflict between Arab socialists and communists. Well, I talked about this in different lives, but you know, when the Arab socialists took power, a lot of times the communist parties became kind of centers of dissent, right? You know, just kind of like in Venezuela, you know, Chavez formed the United Socialist Party. A lot of communists joined the United Socialist Party, but the Communist Party of Venezuela stayed intact, and a lot of them didn't. The ones who didn't, there was an element of opposition, right? American separatism will rise in coming years. Will states break away? Yes, we'll talk about that. Jeez. American separatism. Alrighty. You know, in the countries where the Ba'athist Arab Socialist parties came to power, it was very common. It was very common for the communist parties to be, you know, kind of radical opposition, right? After the Russian Revolution, all the serious folks tended to join the Bolsheviks, right? There were originally three parties in the Soviet Union. You know, the Bolsheviks, the left Mensheviks, the left Revolutionary Party, but everyone who was serious joined the Bolsheviks. So then the other two parties became centers of destabilization and dissent. It kind of became the two naysayer parties. You know, and in the Ba'ath countries, that was a similar situation, right? If you were serious, if you wanted to seriously build socialism in Iraq or Syria, you joined the Ba'ath party. But if you were somebody who was a little bit of a naysayer, you know, you ended up joining the Communist Party. And the communist parties, because they weren't the main party building socialism in the country, they became kind of dissident hubs. And because of that, there was often conflict between the Ba'ath Party and the Communist Party. But there was often alliance, too. I mean, it was off and on. It depended how things were going. The Communist parties had a very explicit relationship with the Soviet Union. They were very much the pro-Soviet parties, whereas the Ba'ath Socialist Party, you know, was more independent. You know, it was about building Arab socialism in Iraq, or building Arab socialism in Syria, or Egypt, or Libya, or whatever. So those conflicts took place, and sometimes the leaders of Ba'ath countries felt like the communist parties were not being helpful, but other times they got along very well. So there are conflicts between different revolutionary parties, and you know, in countries where the Communist Party comes to power, often a rival socialist faction will be suppressed. So, you know, in revolutions, often, especially in countries with more poverty and more instability, you know, you get rival factions in the revolution that will fight with each other, and that happens. And you know, that's the situation, and that these, you know, one faction suppressing another faction doesn't prove that the country is not revolutionary. It just proves that one faction is suppressing another faction for whatever reason. Sometimes it might be correct to suppress them because it might be a necessary thing to do for society. Other times it might be unjust political persecution, right? I mean, I'm for human rights for everybody, but I'm just telling you that in revolutionary countries, different factions will compete with each other. And that's what you saw in the conflict between the Ba'ath countries and the Ba'ath governments and the communist parties. You know, there was suppression. You know what? In the Democratic People's Republic of Yemen, where a Marxist-Leninist party took power, there was suppression of Ba'ath Arab socialists. believe it or not, right? And that the Marxist-Leninists were the ruling party, and so they saw the Baath Arab Socialists as a rival. So in revolutionary countries, there are fights between factions and different revolutionary parties, and that happens. So I think that, when people want to point, oh, the Baath can't be revolutionary, they locked up the communists. Well, it's not that simple. But yeah, it's unfortunate. The Bolsheviks arrested. There was a lot of suppression of communists by the Bolsheviks. There was a lot of factional fighting after the Russian Revolution. So these things are complicated, and that people that want to give simple answers, they need to look into the situation. All right, someone said, how do I convince people that capitalism will end? Well, for the simple reason that things change. I'll tell you, I can't believe the amount of progress, and I shouldn't even say progress, the amount of change that I've seen in my lifetime, right? I am only 32 years old. And if you had told me when I was 19 that polls would be coming out showing that socialism was wildly popular, that a socialist candidate would run and be a major contender for the Democratic primary, I wouldn't have believed you, because that was not part of the world I lived in. The world that I lived in when I was 19 was a world in which socialism was considered a bad word. Socialism was not part of American discourse. Socialism was, it was just not recognized as ever possible. Things have drastically changed, right? I mean, who saw this pandemic coming? A does not equal A. A does not equal A. A does not equal A. There is no way that this first A can be the same as this second A. The universe is in a constant state of change. Nothing is the same as anything else. Nothing is a copy of anything else. And yes, socialism will come next, because out of chaos cometh order. Capitalism is creating chaos, and out of that chaos will come order. So yeah, I mean, it will happen, and it's going to be a painful transition, I think. And it's already a painful transition we're seeing. But yes, I think we will transition to socialism eventually. I hope that it comes as peacefully as possible. But yes, I do think it'll happen. Syria sanctions. Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, the fact that, Donald Trump can't make up his mind. Donald Trump can't make up his mind. It's like he's saying, we don't want to overthrow Assad. Oh, okay, well, we do want to overthrow Assad. Oh, okay, we don't want to overthrow Assad. There's the neocon wing of his own administration who he's trying to appease. It was Mike Pompeo who enacted those Caesar sanctions. The United States, again, they should be fighting Al-Qaeda to keep Americans safe, but instead they're fighting the Syrian government, a government that protects Christians and religious minorities, a government that wants stability, that is aligned with Russia and China and Iran, and Venezuela, to try and stabilize the country. It's a real tragedy that these sanctions are not good, right? Syria is trying to stabilize the country. The United States is trying to destabilize Syria because they don't want a stable Ba'ath socialist country in the Middle East. And, the Trump administration seemed like it was departing a little bit from that, but that's changed. So, yeah, there you go. I'm not a fan of these new sanctions on Syria. And again, I think it shows that Mike Pompeo in particular represents a faction that really does want to make things worse in the world, the regime change faction. All right, China, is it socialist or state capitalist? China is a socialist country. It's a socialist country because of the simple fact that in China, the economy is not organized around profits. Capitalism is a system of profits in command, production being carried out for profit. Socialism is when production is carried out upon a predetermined plan and the means of production, and the economy is organized by the state, right? It's not production for profit, it's state central planning. State capitalism is when the state facilitates the profits of the capitalists. It's still production for profit, but the state is heavily involved. Saudi Arabia, state capitalism. Singapore, state capitalism. After the Second World War in Britain, when they nationalized almost everything, state capitalism. But China, on the other hand, you have a communist party with 90 million members that is controlling the economy in order to create economic growth on behalf of the population overall. Very different economic system. China has corruption, it has its difficulties, but China's economy is not a capitalist economy. It's not profits in command. China's economy is state central planning under the leadership of a communist party. So that's the difference there. I get asked that a lot. That's okay. How do you convince right-wing union members of socialism? Well, I think if anything, point out why the boss is treating them the way he is, and and how why does their union need to exist? What are the day-to-day struggles on the job that you are constantly dealing with, the grievances that the workers have, and show how they're rooted in capitalism. I think that's the issue, right? To show that it's not just your boss being an asshole, that your boss is trying to make profits, and it's rooted in the system. I think that's the issue, and show that the problems of the individual workplace, of the boss trying to get away, get you to work as much as possible, pay you as little as possible for that work. The ongoing day-to-day shop struggles that communists used to talk about, shop struggles. Try to, show that those shop struggles are struggles of all of society. Should the left worry about pan-Turkic nationalism? Yeah, okay. Oh, boy. All right. Okay. All righty. All right. All right. 1936 Constitution of the USSR. Was it socialist before the 1936 Constitution? Well, the 1936 Constitution of the USSR, it said that the USSR was a fully socialist country. That's what it said, that by 1936 they had become a fully socialist country, and and actually there's even some literature I've seen published in the late years of Stalin's life that claimed the USSR was already entering the early stages of communism. I don't agree with that. And I think that, in a lot of cases, the Soviet Union, they were surrounded, they were being attacked and demonized by the world media, and they very much were kind of defensive. They didn't admit their mistakes. And the Soviet Union made mistakes. I mean, it did. It made mistakes, but they didn't admit their mistakes. And they kind of, they were very boastful in their literature, which they should have been, because they were constantly being demonized around the world. So because of that, when you read explicitly stuff like the 1936 Constitution and the analysis of the USSR, you get kind of a very defensive, kind of boastful presentation. I don't think the USSR was fully socialist in 1936. It was not a capitalist country, but to say that it was a completely full-blown socialism in 1936, it was very revolutionary. They had done a lot of things. They had a centrally planned economy, but there was still a lot of room for improvement. And that that communism, that ultimate goal of communism, is not possible until the entire world has been socialist for a long time. So, the 1936 Constitution said the USSR had fully created socialism. Well, the USSR was it was a socialist country, but it wasn't, to say that was as socialist as a country could ever be. No country could ever be more socialist than the USSR was in 1936. They were beginning on the road to full communism in 1936. A little boastful, right? They were, I believe Stalin famously said that he felt that in the USSR sometimes they were dizzy with success. Right? And they were achieving real miracles that no country had ever achieved before in terms of industrialization, raising people out of poverty, economically transforming the country. So yeah, the 1936 Constitution, when they said that they were fully socialist at that point, I mean, they were not capitalist. I mean, it was a centrally planned economy. They'd done amazing things to industrialize the country, but they weren't entering the early stages of communism. Certainly we're not doing that. But yeah, I mean, at 1936, right at that point, they'd completed the first 5-year plan. They were in their second 5-year plan. They had their new constitution. Their new constitution said they were a fully socialist society. I can understand why some people were critical of that. The thing to remember about this is that one of the problems that the Soviet Union had, right? If you look at the Khrushchev revelations, 1956, it destroyed the Communist Party USA. Just destroyed it. The Communist Party USA was just devastated by the Khrushchev revelations. And the reason for that was that many people in the Communist Party USA believed the Soviet Union was a paradise. Many people, they just believed the Soviet Union was infallible, right? They never had really kind of recognized the Soviet Union had big problems. And as a result of that, when the actual leader of the USSR, Khrushchev, came out and basically just threw Stalin under the bus and said that every allegation against him was true and trashed Stalin before the world and portrayed Stalin in such a negative light, these people, they felt betrayed. They felt like, oh, wow, the Soviet Union, we thought it was a paradise, and even the leader now of the Soviet Union is saying Stalin did a lot of bad things. And so a lot of people quit the Communist Party en masse. And that sometimes, right, again, this is the problem. I'd much rather have people be overly enthusiastic about socialist countries than to not be. But yes, it's a problem. I've seen it before where people, they become so enthusiastic about sort of supporting socialist countries that they get and they see really existing socialism and it's flawed in some way, and then they just turn against socialism. And that happens. There's actually an article Monthly Review magazine published called How to Visit a Socialist Country, because this happens. Many times you'll have American leftists go to Cuba, and they go to Cuba and they don't like what they see. Right? They see a country with the military being a big part of it. Well, Cuba's 90 miles from the United States, constantly facing threats and embargoes and invasion. The military is going to be a big part of it. But if you're an anti-militarist leftist and you see, oh my God, Cuba, the military is everywhere. Is there racism in Cuba? Yeah. There are people. It's a problem that they have. They've done a lot to uproot it. But is it a problem in that socialist societies have their problems? They have their problems, and that if you gloss over that, if you never are aware of that, you make socialist societies out to be paradises that can do no wrong. It can lead to a lot of demoralization. And I think that the Soviet Union, because they had accomplished so much, and because they were constantly under attack, a lot of the people that were their biggest admirers in like the 1930s, 40s, and 50s became very demoralized in response to the Khrushchev revelations, because they kind of overinflated the Soviet Union's greatness. They didn't recognize the Soviet Union had problems. And so when the leader of the Soviet Union came out and said a bunch of stuff, some of the stuff in a lot of the stuff in Khrushchev's speech was false. Were not true allegations, but regardless, it had this demoralizing effect that you need to have a realist view. Socialism is not paradise. Socialism is not heaven on earth. Socialism is a more effective economic system than capitalism. It's more efficient. It enables countries to raise themselves out of poverty. It's a centrally planned economy without the irrationality of greed. But it's not a magical solution to all problems. Right? Socialism doesn't solve all problems. A lot of socialist societies have corruption. A lot of socialist societies have big problems. So, I think that's the issue that the person was pointing at. Is the national anthem of the United States racist? I think one of the verses is, right? I don't know all the verses to the national anthem. I only know the first verse. But someone actually told me that there's a verse, like one of the second or third verses has some racially offensive stuff in it. But it was a drinking song. But you didn't know that. The tune for the U.S. national anthem was a drinking song. And think about it, right? It actually would be a good drinking song. Oh, say, can you see? Drink by the dawn's early light. Drink, I so proudly we hail. Drink. I can see people in a bar singing it. Da, 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 da. It was a drinking song, right? It was like a popular pub drinking song that English and American men would sing while they were drinking alcohol in bars. That's where the tune came from. And then Francis Scott Keyes, he wrote the words, and then they made them into the national anthem. The first verse is not racist from what I understand, but I understand, there's like a second or third verse that has got something in it. I don't even remember what it is. I can understand. And the thing is, a lot of people say the American flag is racist. A lot of people say that, that everything in America is tainted by the legacy of slavery and imperialism and colonialism, and they're not wrong about that. So, just the anthem itself, is there something racist in the anthem, I think is the question, or is it just the notion of America, the country with freedom and justice for all, except, all the people brought here in chains and all the people who suffered and the Native Americans who are being killed? I think that's the issue, right? I guess I hope I've answered that question. Why do you think we're having a third awakening in the USA? Well, this is a theme that I've emphasized on previous lives, that before the American Revolution, there was the Great Awakening. Back then, the country was very, very religious, and politics manifested itself in terms of religion. And throughout the 13 colonies, there was a religious awakening called the Great Awakening, where people started gathering for these mass religious meetings and yelling against the government and being frustrated about the world. And that was the first Great Awakening. And then it was followed by the American Revolution. And then, preceding the American Civil War, there was the Second Great Awakening, in which a lot of new religious groups were formed. There were tent revival meetings all over the country. Slavery was condemned, and there was a big theme of the need for rebirth as a country, the need for redemption, the need to stop doing things the way we were doing them and turn things around, that the country was just, had sinful ways and was going to hell, and we needed the country to be reborn. That was a big theme of the Second Great Awakening. And then that eventually, the Second Great Awakening, John Brown was a religious fanatic during the Second Great Awakening who tried to lead an armed revolt against slavery and all kinds of abolitionist groups. And it eventually, led to the Civil War. And I would argue that now we're in it's not a religious awakening, right? America at this point is so secular and so religiously diverse that it's not a religious awakening. But I would say that we are in a period of awakening in this country. Look at the protests that are going on right now. I mean, look at the wave of anti-police brutality protests. Look at the interest in socialism among the population. Look at the anti-capitalism. Look at the rise of Trump. Look at the rise of Bernie Sanders. I mean, the country is awakening right now. But before we can have a political revolution, there needs to be a cultural awareness about socialism and the principles. And socialism needs to be fixed. The synthetic left has to be beaten back. We need real socialist ideology to take center stage. So that's why I'm building the Center for Political Innovation, because we need an optimistic, constructive socialism. The synthetic left death cult ain't going to cut it. So I hope that answers that question. All righty. Did Gaddafi fund terrorism? Well, here's the thing. Gaddafi funded all kinds of groups that were labeled terrorist by the U.S. government. In the African National Congress, for example. African National Congress, right? That's the ANC. That's, Nelson Mandela. They were designated as foreign terrorists by the U.S. government. Gaddafi gave them weapons, gave them financial support. So, yeah, according to U.S. law, Gaddafi funded terrorism. The Provisional Irish Republican Army was supported by Gaddafi. According to the U.S. government, they were terrorists. Gaddafi supported them. So, according to U.S. law, he supported terrorism. So I guess, it just depends what your definition of a terrorist is, right? According to the U.S. government, the people in Bahrain who want, an elected government and not a king appointed by Saudi Arabia are terrorists, right? According to the U.S. government, there are groups all over the world that are designated terrorists by the U.S. government. So did Gaddafi support such groups? Yes, no question about it. He also supported the Black Panthers. He supported the Nation of Islam in the United States. He supported all Palestinian groups that are labeled terrorists by the U.S. government. So yeah, if you're asking me, did Gaddafi support groups that were designated terrorists by the U.S. government? The answer is yes. Bolsonaro, the left group's role in his election. Well, that's Helen Woolley asked that question, and I think what you're getting at, Helen, is the fact that there is an ultra leftist problem in Brazil. That there are some groups in Brazil that wouldn't support the Workers' Party, right? The election of Bolsonaro was a result of the fact that you had the Workers' Party of Brazil, which, they couldn't run Lula da Silva, so they ran another candidate. But the Workers' Party of Brazil significantly moved to the left. I believe one of the people on the ticket was actually a member of the Communist Party also. But there was kind of an ultra-leftist, problem, right? That there was, there was an issue with some of the Maoists and Trotskyites refused to support the Workers' Party because it wasn't, communist enough or something, even though one of the people on the ticket was a Communist Party member. I think that was an issue. Some of the Maoist groups in South America, just some of the Maoist groups, almost function as Western capital. In Venezuela and other places. And yeah, some of the ultra-leftist groups. And I think more than that, the cultural synthetic left in Brazil, right? There's like a student left of people in Brazil that are, they're like left in the sense that they don't like Bolsonaro, but they're really against socialism. They're really against Venezuela. They're kind of like cultural liberals. Those folks didn't vote for the Workers' Party also. And I think that's an issue, right? And that's a problem in Venezuela. I went to Venezuela. There's people in Venezuela that are young anarchists that are into hip hop and American music and hate Maduro because he's not, woke or whatever. And, westernized youth. They talk about this. The westernized youth that are out for every color revolution, that hate all existing socialism, think America is a land of milk and honey and endless iPods. They're a problem. And they're, they when it gets down to it, a lot of them would prefer Bolsonaro over Lula da Silva simply because Bolsonaro is more American in their eyes, right? This fetishization of America. Young people that are addicted to American media. They watch American media on their cell phones, and they think America is Real Housewives of New Jersey and endless material wealth. And if only the USA were more like America, their country were more like America, then they could get more wealth. This is a problem everywhere in the world. The westernization of youth. It's a big problem. So yeah, and I think that, but ultimately though, the jailing of Lula da Silva was the key factor. If Lula da Silva hadn't been locked up, he would have been the leader. Bolsonaro is a right-wing demagogue. He's not a populist. He's definitely not a socialist or anything like that. Bolsonaro is a right-wing demagogue, free marketeer, big supporter of Israel. Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay, so I was asked by someone called Default about shooting and segregation in Chaz. I am actually planning to do an interview with some of the Chaz people very soon to get to the bottom of what's going on there. I thought the Chaz was dissolved, but apparently it's not, and there's a lot of confusion, so I'm going to talk to someone on the ground. I'm going to do a Skype interview with someone on the ground to actually get to the bottom of what's going on. We know all kinds of rumors have come out about things that are not true, but there has been some violence there, and I want to just talk to somebody from on the ground. So I'm trying to set that up so we can get to the bottom of it. So, I mean, that's the thing. I don't want to tell you something's going on there without, I'm going to talk to someone who is there, someone on the ground. All right, multipolar world. Yeah, I do think we're going to have a multipolar world. I do think we're going to have a world that's not completely centered around Wall Street and London, but which there's many centers of global trade. There's many centers of economic power. And different countries, have a role in building each other up with win-win cooperation. I think that's a good thing. And this pandemic is already kind of showing that. I mean, the way some countries are coming out a lot stronger, whereas the West is coming out of this a lot weaker. Look at those IMF predictions that I read earlier on the broadcast. Absolutely. I think we are definitely heading toward a multipolar world. No question about it. And yeah, I mean, China's going to be a big part of it. Russia's going to be a big part of it. But India is also going to be a big part of it. Brazil is going to be a big part of it. South Africa is going to be a very big part of it. There's many countries around the world that are going to be part of, that are going to be rising. I think that we're going to have a more level playing field around the world. All right, argumentium ad ridicule. Yeah, I mean, that's classic, right? This empanada creep. It's just, he said that the notion that the Congress for Cultural Freedom had distorted leftism was Nazi, right? It's fact. It's proven fact. But he said it was a Nazi conspiracy theory. Oh, okay. I mean, it's well-documented fact. The CIA brags about it. All kinds of books have been published. But you're a Nazi if you say it. And that's the thing with these people. That's one sign of the synthetic left. Everyone's a Nazi. Everyone's a Nazi. Just like on the far right, everyone's a communist. Everyone's a Nazi. Disagree with them? You're a Nazi. Oh, okay. You're a Nazi. And, again, do they refute anything you say? No, they just call you Nazi. And they don't want socialism. They don't want historical progress. Yeah, bad empanada. Yeah, he made a video attacking me. What's wild is that he thinks it's my voice on the channel trailer, and it's very clearly not. Very clearly not. So, he said that it's anti-Semitic. Look, here's the root of the controversy. Why don't we just address this straight on? I said, and again, all right, let's just get into this for just a minute. So on a broadcast with like two other people, I was on somebody's like live stream. We talked for like 2 hours. And during this conversation, I said that it's pretty obvious that these YouTubers who come out of nowhere and suddenly become the voice of leftism in the United States and have New York Times articles written about them, and the New Yorker does features on them, and they're just like they're like nobody, and all of a sudden they're like, the mainstream media is propping them up as the voice of leftism in the United States, and they all have Pentagon political views. I said that this is interesting, and I said that this probably shows, and I actually praised them. I praised ContraPoints, and I praised some of the work that these people are doing, but I said that there's a division in the ruling class, and it seems like there's a foundation or a wealthy individual or some entity that is looking to fight the alt-right, which is good. I don't like the alt-right. That's probably highlighting certain voices. That's all I said. And I praised them, and I just, I said it's pretty obvious that there's some interests that want this left kind of message out there. Oh my God! I mean, of all the things I've said, every live I go on about China and Russia and I am the synthetic left and the history of I think they would find like what? I mean, I mean, I think that there's a lot of things I've said that would be way more controversial than that. But the fact that I suggested that anybody might be supporting them, that they didn't just randomly become popular. Oh my God! These people lost their mind. And it's weird. It's weird. And then they attack me. Oh, yeah, well, you're funded by Russia. I mean, it's like, I don't make bones about what my job is. I've never tried to conceal it. You write articles for China.org. You know, who's that paid for? It's like, of course it is. I mean, it's called China.org, you idiot. Like, I don't make any effort to conceal the work that I do. I'm proud of the work that I do with RT, the China.org. You know, I used to work with Press TV. I make no effort to conceal that. And I wasn't even trying to bait them. You know, I wasn't even saying like, oh, you know, these people are shills. I wasn't saying that. All I said was, it appears that somebody is pushing these people forward as an answer to the alt-right, who other people are pushing forward. We know the alt-right is being pushed forward by some people. That's all I said. And these people, like, lost their minds. You know, I mean, this whole video by this empanada guy, it's like lost his mind. I mean, and it's like, my website looks too professional. Oh my God, I'm sorry. I'll set up a shitty website. I'll try to make a shitty website. I'm so sorry. And then he thinks that it's my own voice in the channel trailer, which it's clearly not. I mean, he has a little bit of an issue recognizing voices. And then he says that suggesting that somebody might be backing people like ContraPoints is anti-Semitic. Well, it would be anti-Semitic if I said it was the Jews, which I didn't say. I said I don't even know who it is. And then people say I said the CIA said it. No, I didn't. No, I didn't. I said who? I said I don't know. I said it looks to me like somebody might be doing this. And people say that I said the CIA is doing it, which I didn't do. They say it's anti-Semitic, that I said the Jews are doing it. I didn't say the Jews are doing it. Where do these people get this stuff? This is insanity. And it's like, again, it's this whole like, methinks the lady doth protest too much. Like, of all the things I've said that these people might attack me for, right? I talk about China and Russia on here. I talk about all kinds of things these people disagree with. None of that. Don't go after that. Caleb said we might be getting funding from somebody. We're not getting funding from nobody. Yeah, he's anti-Semitic. Yeah, he's spreading Nazi conspiracy theories. Yeah, and it's like, what? You watch the clip. I'm not even dumping on them. I'm saying it's good that we need people to counter the alt-right. I just wish they weren't so hostile to actual socialists, for Christ's sakes. I mean, wow. Wow. And then from there it goes to an attack that I wear a suit. Oh, God. And that I encourage success. And I'm a motivational speaker. I should be demotivating all of you, right? I shouldn't be motivating all of you. I should be demotivating you all. I should get on here every night and go, curse you all out and tell you to all go screw yourselves. I mean, you can't make this up, right? And the suit became the focus of it. I love these screenshots they made about the suit. I love it. It's like, if you ever wanted a confession of what these people are about, the synthetic left, that did it, right? That was it, right? That this guy, it's like, how dare I wear a suit? It's, for them, being a leftist is an expression of alienation. It's an expression of hopelessness. It's an expression of destructiveness, of envy, of just frustration. And they want me to dress awful. They want me to have a website that's not professionally done. They want me to not be motivational in the way I speak to people, right? In their mind, the job of leftism is to promote, failure and demoralization. Well, I'm not in that business, folks. That's what the opening presentation was about. So if you're looking for me to demotivate you, make you not like yourself, hey, you're looking to the wrong guy. You're looking to the wrong guy. Okay, Reddit. Yeah, I saw that Chapo Trap House, they got taken down off of Reddit. What is that about? I haven't followed it. I don't listen to them very much. What was that about? I don't know what it was about, but yeah, I haven't followed it. But Reddit is a strange site. People have said that Reddit tolerates more racism and stuff, but whatever. I like Reddit. I'm on Reddit, and, whatever. I mean, Reddit communism is controlled by obnoxious people, I'll tell you that much, but there's different communities on Reddit, I mean, when Reddit communism was banning people for supporting the Communist Party, that was like classic. On Reddit communism, the communist Reddit, if you support the Communist Party, they ban you. That is some surreal stuff. And that was like, the comedy there was massively. I mean, I'm not in the Communist Party, but I know people who are. And it's like, you can disagree with the Communist Party all day, but to have a ban on the Communist Party on communism Reddit, that's something else. So there you go. All right, blockchain. Yeah, I don't know enough about blockchain. That's one of my blind spots. I don't know enough about blockchain technology. I do know that Venezuela has made a lot of money from blockchain technology. I think that's interesting. But yeah, I don't know enough about it to really give you an answer there. All right, the new right in Europe, pan-Europeanism. Yeah, not a fan. Not a fan. You know, I mean, pan-Europeanism, right? Building a European Union and stuff. That's only going to strengthen imperialism, right? I mean, I'm not in favor of the EU. The EU has been bad for Britain and bad for British workers. It's been bad for workers all across Eastern Europe. It's bad for France. It's bad for Germany. The EU is an imperialist alliance that is bad for all the workers of Europe. I'm not pan-European at all. Number one. And what's weird is they're asking about the new right, and the new right seems to be focused on opposing the pan-European movement. So that's a little bit weird. Paganism. You know, that's a little bit weird, right? So paganism, wild story. Let's talk about paganism for just a minute, right? We got some time here. It's not too late. When I was in high school, my French teacher was an evangelical Christian. And I remember, you know, she was teaching us about the cathedral at Notre Dame. And she was telling us this is a Christian, one of the biggest and most important Christian institutions. They've been practicing Christianity there for thousands of years, etc. And I raised my hand and I said, well, what about during the French Revolution? Because I heard that in the French Revolution, they converted, the churches of France into temples of reason. And she's like, yes, during the French Revolution, the cathedral at Notre Dame was turned into a pagan facility. And I said, pagan? And she said, yeah, they didn't believe in God, so they were pagan. And I remember talking to her later and realizing that for her, pagan just meant non-Christian. Anything that was not Christian was pagan. That's not actually what pagan means. I believe the actual roots of the word pagan mean in the woods, mean people in the woods. The term pagan referred to the religions of Europe that predated Christianity. Before Christianity was brought to Europe by the Roman Empire, before that, the people of Europe practiced all kinds of religions. They worshipped Odin and Valhalla. They celebrated Yuletide. They had maypoles. They did all kinds of stuff, and that was all considered by the Catholic Church to be pagan. And the Catholic Church actually adopted some of it, right? You know, the tradition of decorating at Christmas time with pine leaves and pine trees, that's pagan. Santa Claus is very much based on Odin, this old man with a white beard who comes around the winter solstice. You know, it's like Odin would return to Earth to get spring going again at the winter solstice. You know, I mean, that there's a, you know, European Christianity is heavily influenced, right, by paganism. But paganism, it's not an actual religion. It's like a slur on the religious beliefs of people in Europe before the Catholic Church was brought, you know, before Christianity was brought by the Roman Empire. Now, what's interesting is that at the time of the overthrow of feudalism in Europe, that a lot of the bourgeoisie that organized, you know, to overthrow the feudal aristocracy, they were very anti-Catholic. They saw Catholicism as holding up feudalism. They were Protestants, but they were also, you know, they were also kind of neo-pagans among the folks who were trying to bring down, feudalism in Europe. You know, and they talk about this, like for example, there was what is that movement called that was involved in trying to turn lead into gold? I can't remember the name of it, but it was a big thing. Alchemy. Alchemy had pagan elements in it. There was elements of like pre-Christian religions in alchemy. There were elements of pre-Christian religion. You know, and like, I mean, great example. There's the hymn that it's now one of the most popular Christmas carols. Right? And it was Joy to the World. Well, listen to the lyrics to Joy to the World. Not very Christian, right? Joy to the world, the Lord has come, let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. There's nothing Christian about that, right? It's like Mother Earth and Father Sky are reuniting at the winter solstice. It's a pagan hymn, but it's like Christians adopted it. And that you know, like many people talk about the individual who discovered, put forward the idea of a solar-centric universe as opposed to the Catholic teaching that the Earth was the center of the universe, probably secretly worshipped the sun. Hi, Caleb, I have to go. Once again, keep up the great work. Thank you, David Fox, and thank you for your great work. And check out, by the way, David Fox and Dust James are doing great broadcasts. Great broadcasts, reading from the history of the three internationals, great studies of Marxist history, great stuff. But yeah, paganism is very strange. But yeah, there is a weird tradition. I guess I'm speeding up to the present. The Nazis. The Nazis had a weird soft spot for paganism because it was European. And like Hitler was really into Odin and Valhalla, and the Nazis were officially Christian, but there was a book written by a key Nazi named Alfred Rosenberg, and it was called The Myth of the 20th Century. Alfred Rosenberg wrote it, and it was an anti-Christian screed defending paganism, arguing that the ancient Germans were pagans. And I think that a lot of weird European right-wingers are pagan, right? And some neo-Nazis worship Odin. And that there is some kind of weird among the far right. There is some kind of weird admiration for pagan beliefs, thinking that they're more authentically European. They obviously don't like, they're anti-Semitic, so they don't like the Old Testament and the Bible and stuff like that. So, yeah, I think that's what the question was about. And the person also asked about American separatism. And I've said I don't favor American separatism. I don't want any part of the United States to break away from the rest of the United States. I want our country to reunify. I want it to be reorganized on socialist lines, right? I would favor self-determination for oppressed groups. If the people of the former Southwest wanted to establish Etzlan, that would be up to them. If the Black Belt, if Black people wanted, to form a Black Belt republic, that would be up to them. But I don't advocate for that. Personally, I don't favor any separatism. I'm not in favor of California breaking away or Texas. But I think if our country continues to function in the way it's functioning right now, if the current trends, perpetuate, I think we will move in that direction. I think that's give it 10 years. If we keep going the way we're going, if things don't start to turn around, there's going to be a lot of separatist movements in the United States. The country's going to start breaking apart. I mean, California is going to say, why are we propping up Tennessee? California's got such a powerful economy compared to Tennessee. They're going to be like, why are we still part of, the same country as Tennessee? I hope this doesn't happen. This is not a good thing. The destruction of a country, right? When a country breaks apart and collapses, that's always a bad thing. So I'm not in favor of that at all. But I think those trends will escalate, All right. Pan-Turkic nationalism. Yeah, that's pretty weird, right? We know that there are people in Turkey that are admirers of Erdogan. And that there are some elements in the Erdogan government that favor Turkey expanding and trying to build like a wider Turkish, like trying to reestablish the Ottoman Empire or something like that. Not a good thing. I'm not in favor of that at all. Not in favor of that at all. Okay. Any other super chats before we go? Any other questions that people have? Anything else on people's minds before we wrap this up? Because I am getting ready to wrap this up. I'm almost out of orange juice. Anything else, folks? Anything else? Folks, I came here to drink orange juice and kick ass, and I am fresh out of orange juice. Just kidding. That's a reference to They Live, by the way, which is a great movie. Great movie from the 80s, starring Roddy Piper. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a very good, it's like a Marxist analogy. John Carpenter, who made the movie, he admits it was influenced by anti-capitalism. The aesthetics of the movie are very much the quadrilateral security dialogue. Asian NATO includes Japan, India, and a security alliance to contain and isolate China. Okay. Is that a question? I mean, that's not a question. That's just, okay, yeah, right? The United States, and that's what the Trans-Pacific Partnership was about, trying to build an economic zone to lock China out, and Trump ripped it up. So, yeah, I know it doesn't surprise me that there are countries talking about how to, roll back the influence of China in Asia. That doesn't surprise me at all. And Japan has hated China, and China has hated Japan for a long time. Japan has a lot of enemies. Korea doesn't like Japan. The Philippines doesn't like Japan. A lot of people in Taiwan like Japan. But other than them, Japan has a lot of enemies in that region. So, just saying. But yeah, unless there's anything further, folks, I think we will wrap this up. Yeah, do check out They Live. Great movie, starring Roddy Todd Piper. Great movie. Anti-capitalist analogy. Someone says they saw it in the theater the year I was born. Ooh. Did it come out then? I don't know. But yeah. Anything else? Just finished your book, says No Name. Well, I'm glad. I hope you liked it. Hope you liked the book. Please put a review on Amazon. Much appreciated. Get your copy today of the latest. I've published an edition of Gaddafi's Green Book that has my own introduction. It's, printed by the Center for Political Innovation. Check it out. It's very popular. Copies are selling pretty well. I wish India the best of luck to build their own apps. Smiley face. Well, there you go. Why no left advocating disbanding NATO? Hey, when the NATO summit came to Chicago, when that NATO summit happened, I was out there with a crowd of leftists protesting against the NATO summit. So, there are, obviously because of the whole Russia thing and all that confusion, but genuine leftists would favor breaking apart NATO. And in fact, there's a book called Ideas They Cannot Jail. And it's the speeches of Eugene Dennis, who was the leader of the Communist Party USA during McCarthyism. William Z. Foster was pretty old, and so this guy named Eugene Dennis was the general secretary. And when NATO was formed, the Communist Party USA put out a statement called Smash the Atlantic Pact. It's a very powerful statement from Eugene Dennis's Ideas They Cannot Jail, which was the Communist Party USA's book that they published during the 1948 trial, if I believe. And yeah, the Communist Party came out very strongly against NATO, and NATO is a military alliance. What they did in Afghanistan is awful. What they did what they've done in Libya, NATO is awful. Sharon Pitts, thank you very much for the super chat. Very much appreciated. I'm anti-NATO. If you're genuine left, you're anti-NATO. But yeah, I'm anti-NATO through and through, and I think any genuine leftist would be anti-NATO. Someone says AMLO is 95% based. Yeah, there's a video floating around on the internet where somebody took my debate with Adam Kokesh, where I said that I said we should stop treating drug users like criminals, but we should smash the big cartels. And they interpreted that as me advocating a U.S. invasion of Mexico. I do not advocate a U.S. invasion of Mexico. And I don't know how that person, got that from my debate about police brutality. It was kind of amusing. I think the person mainly was mad at Kokesh. It was like another libertarian who didn't like Adam Kokesh. But they had to give themselves credibility by attacking me also. So they made this video on the debate between Kokesh and myself. And they started out by showing the clip of me saying that we need to, go after the big drug cartels that work with the CIA, and said, Caleb wants to invade Mexico, and proceeded to have all kinds of graphics showing about why it would not be good to invade Mexico. I don't advocate invading Mexico. It shows how, you never know when you say something. Sometimes people hear something completely different. It's a very weird thing, but, we all have our own mind. We all have our own associations. And you can say something to somebody, and they can hear something completely different than what you said. And there's nothing you can do about that. As somebody who writes and speaks and all of that, people have weird associations with things. I don't know how this person thought I was advocating invading Mexico, but that's what they thought, right? So there you go. All right, folks. All right. What are the differences between classical and new Eurasianism? How has Alexander... Whoa, went by really fast. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not an expert on Eurasianism, right? I know the basics of Eurasianism, Atlanticism versus the Eurasianism and the theories there, but I'm not a Eurasianist. There's some things I might have learned from it, but I'm not a Eurasianist. I don't fundamentally have a Eurasianist worldview, and I'm not an expert on Eurasianism, so I can't answer the question. That's not my worldview, so can't answer the question. But thanks, folks. Yeah. And on that note, folks, I think before we go, I will recite a little piece of poetry. A little piece of poetry that was recited to me a long time ago by a longtime friend. It kind of encompasses our differences with the synthetic left. And for those of you who listen to this regularly, you've probably heard it before, but a lot of you are new, so here we go. On a busy street in a busy town, I saw them tearing a building down. With a ho-heave-ho and a lusty yell, the men swung a beam, and a sidewall fell. I said to the foreman, "Are these men skilled, like those you might hire if you wanted to build?" The foreman just smiled and said, "No, indeed. Unskilled labor is all that I need, for I can easily wreck in a week or two that which took builders years to do." So I thought to myself as I walked away, which of these roles have I tried to play? Am I a builder who builds with care, measuring life with a compass and square? Am I following life with a well-made plan and striving to do the best that I can? Or am I that type that scours the town, content with the labor of tearing things down? Very good piece of poetry. Very, very good piece of poetry. Folks, we need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. We need a government of action to fight for working families. A new upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression, but the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. While the danger of a new world war still exists, the people of all countries must get prepared. Revolution is the main trend in the world today. While the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today. On that note, folks, good night.